Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews, this being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Family Law. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with the main case that they're dealing with this episode. It is this couple that is adopting a child, and even from the very beginning, the way the dad was acting, I was like, oh, he seems a little weird. The husband, he just seemed a little off, and he's just like, yeah, you take care of all that, like, oh yeah, like we were up all night, but like she's attending to the baby. He seemed a little disconnected, but then like, oh, the moment the baby started choking, he was like, oh my god, what's wrong, what's going on? So yeah, times we jump a week, the baby is doing better, but it turns out the baby has a medical condition. It's like the baby's going to need future surgeries, and this child's going to need like very extensive care growing up, just because like, you know, it's going to probably have like future medical issues and stuff like that. You just got to be careful with the baby going forward. Well, they made the decision, even from the very beginning, you can tell it was more so the husband's decision, that they want to back out of the adoption, you know, because they were in the middle of the paperwork. They never fully signed anything. But the thing is, the wife, she was there, she was there during the meeting. She even did some of the yoga with the biological mom. And Lucy, and it really went home when Lucy was like talking to both of them. And once again, I don't want this to turn into such a conversation, because it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, they're trying to paint the dad, they got to paint the man as the bad guy. It's like, no. Everyone recognizes how much he sucks. Even Daniel recognizes. I don't want it to turn into like, oh my god, this is such a man-hating thing. It's like, no, there can be controlling partners in a relationship. It doesn't always have to be a man. I'm sure, like, probably, I mean, maybe there's a statistic about like which one it's most likely to be, but I mean, people can suck in general, men or women. And in this case, it's like the husband sucks because he's such a conceited douchebag. And even the way he kind of talks over his wife and kind of belittles what she does, it's like, he's like, yeah, I'm building this very particular brand. The fact is, he went out of the way talking about what they're going through, and he just happens to mention like the hot sauce thing that they're making, right? And he's like, oh yeah, my wife, she handles all like the website and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, but also like the marketing and stuff. Like it just felt like he belittled it, and just like, oh, like it's like, oh, you're my beautiful, wonderful muse. And the way he's talking to her, even Lucy can pick up like, oh, he's making this decision. She kind of has to go along with it because he's convinced her it's the right thing to do. But for her, she's like, no, this baby's just as much mine, so I don't want to let it go. But he's like, right, it basically gives her an ultimatum. If you choose that baby, you're choosing that baby over us. So that turns into that situation, and now it turns into a legal thing of the wife wants to say, fine, I'll get rid of your name off the paperwork, but everyone's like, no, don't do that, because you are in this together, and raising a baby on your own is tough. You're going to need that financial support, especially considering your child's like medical needs. It's like, yeah, you're going to need every bit you can get, and he needs to like do his part as well, because yeah, he wants to back out now, because it's like, yeah, now things have gotten difficult, because it is that situation and that conversation of, hey, it is this thing of like, right, a baby isn't something you should be able to just kind of return. But then Daniel, considering everything he's going through with Danielle, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, like maybe they just realized they weren't the right fit. This is a different circumstance because the husband is more so pushing that more than the wife is. So now it is a situation of him manipulated the situation of like, oh yeah, like she was depressed and yada yada yada. He's trying to paint her in a negative light. She's like, no, you told me to do this, so on and so forth. It's very similar to like the father and daughter relationship last episode, where it's like, well, you're trying to paint me as a villain in the courtroom when you're the one that suggested that. She kind of abided by a lot of stuff. He's like, oh, like it was either he signed stuff or she signed stuff, and he was like, he made the excuse. She was like, wait, you said that was because of like carpal tunnel and stuff. Like, it's just he is just proving to be a complete and utter douchebag. And eventually they even get the biological mother to be more on their side. I even love that conversation it brings up amongst the three of them, the three siblings, where it's like, Harriet's like, oh, like, you know, two-parent households, you know, are a better fit for a child or something like that. And Lucy's like, I know you didn't just say that. Daniel's like, where are you getting your facts? And Abby's like, are you kidding me? You talking to your three children who are pretty much practically raised by a single mother. He's like, hey, I was making the bacon. I was bringing home the bacon and stuff. It's like, yes, but you weren't there emotionally, kind of physically. Like, you weren't there for all of us. And none of her siblings doubted. It's like Daniel and Lucy were just kind of, yeah, that is true. So it's like, even Lucy, who's like, you know, your special baby girl, recognizes you haven't always been the greatest dad, like, for you to make it. So it's like, right, there's nothing saying like, a single mother, yes, it's going to be hard kind of doing that on your own, because we don't know what her foundation is. Like, she might not have like family, because that didn't really come up this episode. So I mean, for all we know, like her parents could be gone or something like that, so she doesn't have the benefit, like that, like, because that was, you know, it's very similar to the situation in episode 2. At least like they had like a parent to kind of help out in that regard. But this, I mean, it never came up, so I'm assuming maybe she doesn't have a parent to kind of back her up. So she was going to have to handle all this on her own. In fact, he was going to leave her high and dry. It's like, man, he sucks so much. And cornering her on his own, being like, all right, fine, I want you happy, so here, I'll give up all legal rights, and I will give you a lump sum of $5,000. It's like, you garbage person. It's like, yeah, you want to kind of wipe your hands of all of this. It's like, you suck so much. Like, why are you doing this? Well, Harry ended up hiring Abigail's investigator because he's like, something about this is wonky. Like, the lawyer he hired, it's like, that guy doesn't handle like small cases like this, so why would he take an interest in this? Turns out, the hubby is actually from a very wealthy family. The fact is, ever since he was 21, he's been getting $20,000 a month. So a grand total wasn't it like $240,000 or something like that a year he's been getting since he's 21. And like the wife is like, wait, what? She had no idea. It's like, oh, he said he's renting this place. No, he actually outright bought it. And so she's the one that's been working 40 hours a week to help with his hot sauce company because he wants to present himself as a made man. Like, oh yeah, like where I made myself in this world, I did it on my own. When in fact, he's been making, like he changed his name to hide the fact is that he wants to make it seem like he's a made man, that he's not relying on his family's like fortune and stuff like that, when in actuality is. It's like, yo, we're struggling and you got all this money and you don't want to pay any support just to help me. Like, this is supposed to be someone you love, but it's just like she's just a means to an end to him. It's like, wow, you suck so much. I also kept wondering, like the entire episode, I was like, why does that judge look so familiar? I know where I recognize him from, Peacemaker. He was only in like 2 scenes, but he's also in the intro. He's the neighbor that like Peacemaker had a confrontation with like twice, especially about the whole Batman conversation about putting your villains down. I was like, wondered why I recognize him. I was like, but I'm pretty sure that's where I recognize him from. So yeah, thanks. You know, I even love the judge was like, oh, I hope, he was talking to the husband's attorney. He's like, oh, I hope you didn't know these disturbing and disgusting facts that he was hiding this amount of money from his wife. And so it's like, yeah. So they are coming up with a more amicable deal, obviously like giving her a housing, like it was like a 50-50 split situation, because they wanted to paint the picture of, especially with Teresa, the biological mom, trying to say like, right, she wanted her child to grow up in a household with 2 parents because she grew up with a single parent, which I don't know if that's 100% true or whether that's like, I'm sure there is truth to it, but I'm sure they probably pressured her to be like, right, you want what's best for it. You might not be taking care of this child, but you still want what's best for this child, right? So they probably like really pushed that on her. And it's actually Abby talking to her and made her like, right, I paid her for her time. But I also love that whole thing of like, yeah, your boss was a little too quick to give me your location. You might want to talk to him about that. I'm like, yeah, that is kind of weird. It's like, oh yeah, I just happened to talk to him and he just really is ready and willing to just give out your location like it's nothing. But showed her that the wife is like dedicated. It's like, right, the fact is, even if your child was growing up in a 2-parent household, that doesn't guarantee that the child is going to be okay, that everything's going to be all right, you know? But how, you know, you're never going to find like 100% the perfect family, you know, perfect 2 people to look after your child. But look at this one. She is dedicated. You will not find like that. Dedication should be enough. That love and dedication should be all it takes for you to be like, yes, this woman loves my child and she will do whatever it takes, you know? So I thought that was so interesting, and so the case is settled, and they were able to help her in the long run. I thought that was just a wild case. I wasn't expecting that twist of like, oh, he's actually from a wealthy family and he's changed it. Like that was an interesting development. So aside from that, it's interesting too how this case had an effect on everybody, because Daniel's handling things a certain way because Abby and Lucy and everyone was completely unaware of him and Danielle splitting. It's not until it's like, wow, we haven't heard from Danielle in a while. And he's like, yeah, we split up. He's like, don't don't follow me, don't talk to me about it. And Abby's like, wow, you were right. And Lucy's like, yeah, I wish I wasn't. But she's like, wow, I mean, look at you. You are literally the only person. She wasn't just talking about the siblings. She said the entire family with a stable relationship, which Lucy has her issues too. But the fact is, it's like, yeah, Abby's in a complicated situation. Daniel's where he is. Their father just broke up with his 2 girlfriends last episode. So, you know, so it's like, yeah, you're the only one with a stable relationship. But yeah, this case made Lucy want to confront her wife Maggie, because she thought like, oh, you're trying to like bring our friends over here with their baby. You're just like really pushing this whole thing. It's like, no, look at my text. They just were in the neighborhood. They asked if they come over. You think I would manipulate you like this? It's like, well, Lucy kind of feels like, but also like I said, I don't think Lucy's done a good job of telling Maggie how she feels about it. It's like, she hasn't really like sat down to have the conversation. Like, maybe we should slow down a little bit. Like, talk it out with your wife. That's what any, not just a marriage, relationships in general are supposed to be that. It is the sitting out, and it's all about communication. That's the foundation of any relationship. I mean, obviously, you liking each other is a big part, but also being able to communicate is an important thing. And I think it kind of plays into that whole thing. But once again, doctors make the worst patients. I think it's the same situation with she's kind of a therapist, like psychologist a little bit, and I think it's easy to see other people's issues, but it's harder to turn that mirror on yourself. I mean, you don't want to be like me, where you always have the mirror turned on yourself and you just like pick apart everything wrong with you. You don't want that, because that's super not healthy. But it's like having that, like, it's hard to have a unbiased opinion and just by unbiased view. So I don't like, at least in the confines of the show, maybe they have had these conversations, because Maggie's like full blown like, let's get this, let's look for donors, let's have this baby. I just haven't seen Lucy in the confines of the show really voice her opinion about not wanting that. She's softballed it a little bit, but she hasn't really had that like important conversation, because as we see in this episode, I mean, granted, she had every reason to leave that relationship. He was not a good guy, and he was a total liar and manipulator. So there's that. But it is a thing of like, yes, this type of conversation could be a make or break in a relationship, but it is important to have those conversations and be like, maybe I don't know if I'm ready for this yet, and I don't know if she's really brought that up to Maggie's attention. I did like that she got her big sis approval, where like Abby met Maggie for the first time and it's like, oh, you should come over, which I think that's going to complicate things in the future, but we'll get to that soon enough. But Abby giving her, like, pointing at her, being like, kind of giving her the wink and the thumbs up, like, wow, your wife is hot. Good on you, sis. I thought that was really cute. So yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. Well, since we're already on that topic, I'll go ahead and talk about it. At the end, Abby she saw Lucy making out with someone. She was like, oh, look at you, get it, girl. But then find out, oh, that's super not your wife. So now it puts Abby in this awkward position, because it's like, cool, I know about you. And now it's like, right, do I say anything? Which I think she will. And especially if Maggie wants her over, it's like, what do I do? Because I know this secret about my sister. Because I don't think that was the same woman she hooked up with back in episode 1 or 2. I don't think that's the same person. It might be, but I think that might be a different person, so... because also, like, Abby's probably in a position to be like, yeah, I'm in no position to judge, considering, but also, like, the affair thing is going to touch her a little differently, just because it's like, right, her husband cheated on her. Regardless of everything Abby was going through at the time, her husband still cheated on her, so it's like, she's going to feel a certain way about that, so, but I'm sure Lucy's not going to appreciate her judgment in this, because it's like, right, your life is a mess, don't judge me, or don't act like you know my whole... It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, so there's that. Also, since I'm transitioning over to Daniel, the pool, got paid through, which Abby was like, yo, let's go check those days, because I'm going to need that money. Turns out Jerry's winning, and Jerry's like, oh, I'm going to take my wife somewhere. He's like, ooh, having that conversation in front of Daniel, and it was super, super awkward. It's like, ugh. I even love that little bit with Abby. Abby like, oh, like, what's going on? He's like, Jerry's like, I'm not gossiping, whatever, you want to figure it out, you talk to your dad about it. But she's like, but Jerry, you know where all the bodies are buried. That's too much for one person to keep all those secrets. I love it. I really love Jerry and Abby's dynamic and relationship. But yeah, And the sad thing is, Harry was completely unaware. I mean, makes sense because Daniel didn't tell anyone about it, you know, and obviously it means a lot to him because he's still looking at pictures of them together. So, I mean, obviously it's still a really fresh breakup because it is that situation of like, did I make the right decision? And that's why he's doubling down like, hey, Dad, put me in a position where I can be, I'm no longer want to just be an associate. I want to be a partner. I want a bigger role in this. I'm already doing stuff here and there. Like, you need someone to help you with it. He's like, yeah, that's why I have Jerry. It's like, well, you know, that way you can spend more time on your golf game. And no, it's not a game. It's business. It's like, right, those are when those conversations, those handshakes, those back rubs, those shoulder rubs type of, you know, quid pro quo type of things kind of come about. That's how you build, you know, your networking, you're building relationships, you're building client lists, stuff like that. So, yes. And for Daniel, this case was going to be his opportunity, but when it was all said and done, his dad, what does he do? Kind of chastises his work because it's like, right, I did my due diligence because I saw that something was there. His dad's almost kind of like, almost saying like, right, you need to kind of be like me. Like, the fact is, you know, it's like, right, I handled this case that wasn't really pro bono because I knew the end result was going to be we were going to make a lot of money off of it. So he's seeing that far ahead. It's almost like his dad saying like, hey, I need you to be as much of an asshole as I am. If he is like, yeah, it's a cutthroat world, and you being a sentimental person like you are to take on all these like collaborative like pro bono cases won't make us money. He's like, I made more in this one case than you've made in like 10 of your pro bono cases. Or even the fact of the matter, you know, and his dad doesn't realize how dickish that is, but he tries to spin it like, hey, you go spend time with that lovely wife and let that be the focus of you. And that just digs it in deeper. Doesn't help that Cecil already hired a quartet that Abby's like, stop it, and makes the notion of they broke up, and he's like, cool. We also have like the new receptionist Nina and her dad, who is the actor who played David in Travelers. I was like, dude, that's so awesome. There was someone else in this show too that I was like, oh yeah, all these recognizable Canadian, it might have been him, but I'm like, yeah, recognizable Canadian actors and stuff. There's also the husband's lawyer is Weatherby, Principal Weatherby from Riverdale. It's kind of like the thing I best know him for. So I was like, dude, a lot of familiar faces. I feel so funny, like, where it's just kind of like, I mean, obviously I see plenty enough Canadian actors in like American stuff too, but it's still, and maybe I just happen to watch a lot of like Canadian related stuff, but I just think it's so interesting that, it's just kind of just circling back, it's kind of a sad situation with the whole Daniel thing, because it's like, he's like doubling down on the work, because it's just, I think he's trying to fill that void with the whole, you know, Danielle and him thing. So I think he's trying to fill that void, so he's kind of overcompensating a bit. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. Obviously it makes things a little awkward between him and his dad and everything, but yeah. I know another point I was making. I'm assuming because they made such a point of introducing her and such a good relationship she has with her dad, Nina, the new receptionist and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, she came highly recommended. So we'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out. Maybe we'll get more time with her. Like they making such a specific point of her. I mean, because like I think she's so happy-go-lucky, and so is her dad. Even him being like, oh yeah, since her mom died, I kind of took over father duties and stuff like that. Oh my God, there's also the element of Abby. Like, I was going to touch on some of the Abby stuff, but I forgot about the therapy stuff. I love her new therapist, where it's just kind of like, okay, like, you ran through everything. It's like, can I get some legal advice? Can I kick a tenant out of my basement? It's like, well, what are the reasons? You have to tell me the whole story. And she's like, She's like, okay, cool. I saw what you did there. Right. Kind of, you know, getting me to recognize, like, what this is. And I really love that it deep dived into some of Abby's issues, like especially like the parental issues, because it's like real, because they introduced this element. Was it last episode or the episode before last? The whole element of, oh yeah, like did Harry really take you and Daniel to Disneyland? It's like, yeah, he was going to invite you, but you were too busy. And she was almost like, wait, what are you talking about? Turns out she's been in this complicated relationship with her father, because he has made attempts to reach out, because she's just like, oh, my dad didn't show him my wedding. He's like, well, did you invite him? It's like, well, no, just because he wasn't there for me in those moments. But then in retrospect, she looks out like, yeah, he wants to say like he did this and did that for me. But then she kind of looks back on things the moment her therapist kind of really points out, like, right, that must have really been tough on you, kind of being, you know, caught up in this nasty split between your parents. And it kind of put things in perspective for her, because it's like, right, did her dad really just abandon her, or did he abandon his like ex-wife, like her mom? Because now it makes her go like, well, mom might, especially considering where things are now, like the case that they're working on. Like a lot of people pulled a lot from this particular case. I mean, that's storytelling for you, especially in a show of this nature, right? That obviously, like when you're working on something, like the cases you work on kind of like influence like your own, you pull stuff away from it to kind of influence your own story. And it made her start recognizing like, hey, maybe my mom like got a little manipulative about it. She's like, you remember that time dad was dad really going to take me to, and we saw it, like her mom opened the refrigerator and she was like, oh, did you eat you could tell that look on her face. She remembered. She did do that on purpose just to spite him. And it's like every time he would come over to spend time with her, she's like, dad, my mom would turn up the music, play songs that he specifically didn't like just to get him away. And eventually she's like, dad just stopped coming around, and put things in perspective for her. It's like, maybe the reason why me and dad don't have a relationship, yeah, like dad attempted to have a relationship with me, but mom didn't want that. It's like, for her, it's because, and her mom even says, your dad abandoned you. And it's like, well, maybe he didn't outright abandon Abby. Maybe in fact yes, because she had every right to feel the way she did, but I think she isolated Abby from her dad. I mean, granted, did Harry do some fuck shit? Hell yes. He broke someone's heart. He cheated on her. God, wasn't it like his receptionist or whatever pregnant? Or maybe just cheated with a secretary or whatever. I don't know if that's who Lucy and Daniel's mom was, or what that's all about. It might have been an affair and then eventually met Lucy and Daniel's dad, or it might have been Lucy and Daniel's mom, or maybe that was Lucy and Daniel's mom. Who knows? But now Abby's starting to get an idea of like, wow. Because even the therapist had pointed out something that I've kind of said, like, right, Harry took you in when he didn't need to, because on some small level it is his attempt to build a relationship with his daughter, especially because it's like, yeah, this is an opportunity to get to know my grandchildren I haven't got to know. Yes, I wasn't, he reckoned, like, I think it's easier to not paint, like, for him it's like yeah, you want to paint me as a villain, he's like hardy har har, and just kind of takes it on the chin, which I think he can admit, he'll probably never fully admit, but I think somewhere on the inside he does recognize it was my fault, but it wasn't all me. But it's still like, I feel like he's not taking as much responsibility as he should be. Either way, it is interesting how that's making Abby kind of contextualize a lot of their relationship and just things between her mom and him, and just her and her mom. So I think that's definitely going to be a really interesting thing going forward. Another funny thing about the episode is Abby's mom called her to be like, yo, your daughter's here making up with her boyfriend. Like, there's like I think he's 15, she's 13. And it's like, cool. Like, turning that into like a statutory rape type of situation, and kind of scaring the crap out of him. But for her, it's like, Sophia, it's like, he's a poet, he's so deep, he reads these articles on Reddit, you're like, oh, I see what you did there, I see what you did there, and it's, Abby's like, cool, let's have a sit down with me, you're a dad, and like, he's referencing some video game, and Nico's like, what? That doesn't sound anything like Ready Player One, and she's defending Sophia as being like, yeah, he said it was like, and it's like, cool. And like, even Frank is like, man, this kid is dull. Like, what did our daughter see in him? Because there was this line earlier on where like Abby was like, we need to basically limit her screen, like limit her computer time. No. How about we just completely like remove any screen time for her? And Frank's like, why are you overreacting? Because she's like, I know she isn't you, which I'm like, did something happen to Abby when she was younger? The fact that she went down that route, and the Frank, like, either it's kind of a thing of she was with a bad boy, and things like, just like it was a very toxic relationship, or like something inappropriate happened. That's why I'm like, it's hard to tell on that. It might just be like hey, you dated the wrong guys. It might just simply be as that, you don't want your daughter getting mixed up with the wrong guys, like losing your virginity to someone you don't really love. And it's just like, you think you love, but this person's a total douchebag and toolweed. So like, I wonder if that's kind of where that's going. So, but there was that element of Frank kissing her on the cheek, which I think for her gives her hope. Like, no, we are slowly but surely, like, if I put in the time and work, I do love that she make references to, like, it's like, oh, did you go to the same school as Doogie Howser? And the lady's like, I don't know, like, did he go to, is that so-and-so? And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, is she playing or she doesn't know? I was like, I mean, I get it. It's a super old reference and it's getting older by the day, but it's like, I've seen I've seen small references to Doogie Howser. I know what it is. I don't think I've ever sat down and actually watched an episode of Doogie Howser. I think I've seen clips of it, but I get the reference now. But I'm like, I don't think I'm old enough to be like, because that was an '80s show. I'm a '90s kid. But I never even saw like syndication of like Doogie Howser, but I get the reference because it's like, oh, you're a super young doctor. And then she also made like a Bruce Springsteen reference, and it kind of went over her therapist's head as well. So I'm like, yeah. Just a generational gap. I love it. I just thought that was kind of neat. Like I said, the Doogie Howser thing, I was like, is her therapist messing with her? But it seems like, no, it's just, like I said, just a generational gap. So it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.